So welcome to PuppetConf. Welcome to Contributor Summit 2017. Yay! I look forward to this day every year. This experience gives me energy and momentum that I carry through for the rest of the year. And so I'm really, really happy to see all of you here. I'm really happy to see a full house this morning. I see folks from Japan, from Germany, from Australia, from the Netherlands, from the States, all together. And it's warms my heart. So for those of you who I haven't met, I'm Meg Hartley. I'm on the community team. And I am here for you. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'll get it settled for you. I also want to welcome the folks tuning in on our live stream today. It's the first time that we've live streamed the Contributor Summit, so we're super pumped about that. So thanks to all of you for tuning in. Please hop into the Puppet Community Slack, and we'll keep the conversation going there. And thanks again. And so just a couple of housekeeping things. As you can see from our agenda, we have a lot of great stuff to get to today. If you wouldn't mind, and our speakers would appreciate if you wouldn't mind just silencing any noise-making devices. Thank you. Also, please grab your food when it's time for lunch and breaks in Golden Gate 1 across from registration. And then just bring them back in here, and we'll eat and continue working together during the breaks. And the Wi-Fi information is there. The network is PuppetConf. And you can get this agenda on sketch.org as well. Let's see if there was anything else I wanted to mention. Also, we have swag back here in the back, so please grab a swag item if you haven't already. But I don't want to take any more of our time this morning, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker. He has deep open source and community roots. He's really excited to talk with you today. He's our Chief Product Officer, Omri Gazitt. Please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Meg. Good morning, everyone. First, a few words about myself. I started out in the 90s as a Unix guy, working for a small startup in Houston. We built database middleware for every Unix under the sun. Then in the 2000s, I spent my time working on dev and cloud stuff at a large software company up in the Pacific Northwest. And then for the better part of this decade, I went back to open source and worked on cloud projects like OpenStack and Cloud Foundry. In my last gig, my team was running a sizable public cloud and numerous private clouds on behalf of global 2,000 customers based on OpenStack and Cloud Foundry. And without tools like Puppet, we could have never dealt with all that complexity and scale. That's why I'm so excited to be at Puppet and also to be here with you this morning, kicking off the Contributor Summit. Woo! And I will pick up my clicker and do the right thing with it. The people in this room and the people on the live stream, you're the brain trust. You're the inner circle. And this is what we've done together over the last decade. Gareth pulled some stats from GitHub. This is just amazing. Amazing stuff. Such a vibrant community. And the most important statistic isn't even on this slide, is that we've helped 37,000 organizations get value from Puppet. That's worth a huge round of applause. We've come a long way over the last decade as a community and as a company. And a lot of things have changed, but some things don't change. Our beliefs in 2017 are the same as they were back in 2007. We set out to empower individuals through software. Our user has been and always will be the practitioner that's trying to get more done and spend less time fighting fires. We deeply believe that open ecosystems win out over closed ones. We have deep roots in open source, and we understand that the source of our collective strength is this community. We share things with each other so that we don't have to reinvent solutions to problems that other people have already solved. And lastly, we believe in building abstractions that span platforms, because we all live in a messy, heterogeneous world. We have one of everything. We have IT running on-premises and off-premises. We have infrastructure that runs, in the cloud, physical, virtual, what have you. We have traditional applications, cloud-native applications. The fancy word for this in this industry is hybrid, but for us, this describes the reality of our day-to-day lives. And it's important for us to have cross-platform tools to help insulate us from getting locked into specific operating environments. This stuff is so important that I'm actually going to get up on stage tomorrow and say the same exact words in front of thousands of people. Because one of the most important parts of my job as the Chief Product Officer is to make sure that these beliefs end up permeating everything we do as a company. The theme for today is bringing back simple. I'm not going to spoil any of Eric's reveal, but let me just say that tomorrow we're launching one of the most important platform enhancements or advancements that we have in years. And we want to bring all of you into the tent so that you can be our co-pilots in this journey. We want everyone to be as excited as we are and to do some mad hacking with us today so that we can make the keynote tomorrow a smashing success. So without further ado, let me bring up the man who needs no introduction, Eric Zero.
Thanks, Omri. Hey, everybody. Give me just a moment here because I need to switch presentation software. We're living in a hybrid world of just different presentation versions too. Let's see how this works. Yeah? All right. Well, as Omri said, we really want to welcome everybody here. It's awesome to see so many folks out. This is the largest contributor summit that we've done, and I was trying to do a quick count, and I lost tally in my head. I think there's 30 tables in here, got at least 6 or 7 folks at each table. We had 350 people registered, and we're live streaming this for the first time. We've never been able to do that before, but the combination of the stuff that we're going to talk about and the kind of momentum that we're trying to build just seemed like the right thing to expand our audience beyond the folks that could physically be here. So shout out to all the folks that are watching remotely. We're going to try and do our best to keep the content remote friendly. We do this internally at Puppet as well. We're a pretty distributed company, so we have video conferences on basically all of our meetings and just try to make it super inclusive to folks that are not in the physical room. Another thing that we're going to do here is we're going to use the opportunity to talk about some new stuff, which is something that we haven't done. As Omri mentioned, this is a little bit of a preview of what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So I want to lay just a couple of ground rules. First and foremost, like all Puppet events and Puppet sort of managed spaces, we're subject to the code of conduct, and I can't stress enough how important it is that we familiarize ourselves, and all of us, employees, staff, everybody is beholden to the rules that are laid out in the code of conduct. So please make sure that you're aware of it. And if you have any if you have any issues, the conduct that's on the PubConf website has an escalation process. So please, again, familiarize yourself with that. So as I mentioned, we're doing something a little bit new here, and I need your help and cooperation. So we're giving Contributor Summit attendees and the stream viewers a preview of some of the main announcements tomorrow because, as Omri mentioned, you're the family, the closest, the inner circle, if you will. Now, I'm aware of the irony of having an inner circle, which includes anybody on the internet that wants to register for the live stream. But my expectation is that the number of folks that are, if you're going to be interested enough to do that and spend your time doing that rather than your actual job, the odds of you also being a malicious troll are probably pretty small. Not zero, I'm not saying zero, but pretty small. But in exchange for what we're doing, I'd like to ask you to keep the public and social chatter to a minimum. If you're not already on the Puppet community Slack, join on slack.puppet.com and keep the conversations on there. And that way we can keep it in the room, so to speak. Again, remote friendly, but amongst a space that we kind of have control over rather than just throwing it out onto the internet. And obviously, I can't, again, prevent people from doing whatever you want to. It is the open internet. But just, I guess my request is to respect the fact that we are trying something new here, and how this goes today will sort of determine the course of how we do things in the future. So if we can abide by the rules, then I think we'll be able to do more stuff like this going forward, which I think would be awesome. So user judgment, as we're in this, as in all things, user judgment. And if you don't trust your own judgment, ask somebody else. You can ask me. You can ask Nigel. Kara and Meg are great people to talk to, and Mike Stahnke, who'll be emceeing this afternoon. Just come up and talk to us. We're all pretty approachable folks here. All right, so that's kind of a build-up, and as Omri said, the theme for the whole thing is bringing it back simple. So over time, Puppet has gotten a lot of features, it's gotten a lot of power, but with that power has come a level of complexity. And we've added this complexity in response to the messy real-world situation that Omri mentioned at the beginning. Things are complicated out there, and as a consequence of that, trying to deal with that complexity, we've added various things onto Puppet over the years that have made it harder to get started with. If you're not already in a world where you have Git repositories and you're doing code deploys every time you want to push a change out to production, requiring that you start out with a control repository and roles and profiles and stuff means that it's really hard to get going, and we kind of force you to take all that complexity up front. So the goal of what we're trying to do in general is to flatten out that learning curve, so both you as the sort of lead practitioners or the experts on your organizations, as well as the folks that you're trying to bring on board, the folks that might be new to your team, new to Puppet. You don't want to necessarily have to spend 4 to 6 months bringing somebody up to speed before they can be productive in your environment. And so the different ways that we're trying to peel back some of that complexity is in the new products, in our existing platform, and probably most importantly in the contribution ecosystem. So let me start off with the product thing first. So I'm incredibly excited to announce a brand new open source project called Bolt. This repo is available today. It's installable right now. If you do gem install Bolt from your laptop, trust in modulo the hotel Wi-Fi being okay, you should be able to get a functional installation of Bolt, which is a task runner. So Bolt connects to systems over SSH or WinRM, and it does stuff on them. It tries to do that stuff with a minimum of fuss, but it tries to also scale up to do what you need. There's a lot of complexity again in our environments, and a lot of things that we need to do that don't match Puppet's core principles of modeling state and then managing the live state according to what the model says. So we wanted to build a tool that would do for those kinds of tasks what Puppet did for configuration management, and Bolt is a huge part of that. So again, you can just gem install Bolt, and once you have it, you get a new command that you can run that's called Bolt, with which you can do a number of things. You can run commands on remote systems. You can run scripts, and if you run a script, Bolt will take a script that you have sitting around in your home directory. I think pretty much everybody who has been a systems administrator or a DevOps person for more than a week or two probably has a / stuff directory. Mine's called Sandbox. Just has a bunch of tools that you've accumulated and scripts that you want to run on your systems. And Bolt will just take those scripts, push them out to the remote systems, run them, and display the output, and then clean up after itself. It also provides a framework called tasks that lets you add a little bit more structure to those scripts. And if you modify your scripts slightly and make them sort of respond to input in a way that Bolt expects and produce output in a way that we can deal with, then you've kind of operationalized those scripts. You've made it so that you can share them. You can upload them to the Forge. You can share them across your team. And if you take an additional step and write a little JSON metadata file, which I'll show you in a moment about it, then you can really introspect what those tasks do without actually having to run them. So that's pretty cool. And kind of the super cyan form, once your power level gets up over 9,000, you can transform and start writing Puppet task plans. And task plans are a way to link those tasks together using a simple version of the Puppet language and perform a set of related tasks in a sequence. It looks very much like Puppet, and I'll show you an example in just a minute, but obviously doesn't produce a catalog, so there's a sort of restricted set of things that you can do there. It doesn't make any sense to have resources in there. It doesn't make any sense to do export and collect and those kinds of things. But all of the normal syntax that you can do inside of Puppet is available to you inside a task plan, and that lets you do some really powerful things like link tasks together, have control flow, have error handling, and those kinds of things inside of your plan. So I mentioned the metadata. This is a JQ'd version. I had to redo this slide because at first I had catted the JSON file and piped that into JQ, and I was like, wait a minute, that's a useless use of cat. I used to yell at people over the internet for doing that. I can't put that up on a slide. Instead, you can just redirect it from standard in. Shout out to my /dot trolls from back in the day. So this is what the metadata looks like for a really simple task. This is a task that manages the state of services, as it says. And having these decorations around what the task is and what it does, what parameters it accepts, helps all of the implementations of the task framework treat the task in the same way without having to run it. This becomes really important. We see this problem today with types and providers, for example, where if you have a provider that's only valid on Windows, it's hard from a pure, because of the sort of intermingling of the type and provider API, which we'll talk about more in a little bit later, to know exactly what that provider is going to do if you're not running your master also on Windows, which you can't quite do yet. So having this JSON description allows us to sort of do an end run around that. And a couple of things I want to point out here. The parameters that are fed into this task are typed, and they use the Puppet type system. So there's a little bit of a dependency on types, but the good news is that that's reusable. Okay, again, if you've changed a module to accept parameters in your classes that use Puppet types, those exact same things are available to you here. And the same types are also available for plans. So again, allows you to do stuff like if you were doing input validation, you can make sure that somebody gave you a true and false value for something that you wanted to be a Boolean, and avoid 10 years of pain of somebody typing the word FALSE and having that actually be true, which some of you pre-Puppet 4.0 folks may recall with a mixture of sadness and horror. So this means that, the metadata means that your task can also be written in any language, which is really awesome. So if you're a Pythonista, if you are a Gopher, I don't know what do Rust people call themselves? I'm not sure. If you're an OCaml hacker, whatever, you can write your task in whatever language is familiar to you, and use the same language independent description of what the task does, so that it can be distributed really easily. That allows them to be included in modules, uploaded to the Forge, and so forth. So Nick Lewis will talk more about this in a little bit, about how to take a script that you have and turn it into a task, and kind of what that means from a framework standpoint. And here's what a plan looks like. This is a plan from the hands-on lab, which Gareth and Nigel put together, and which we'll be running folks through both here during Contributor Summit, where there's a bunch of self-paced or group-friendly lessons that we can go through to sort of walk through each of the steps of getting used to tasks. And again, the final form here is to write a plan. And as you can see, there's the signature of the plan should look really familiar to you if you've written or read a class in Puppet over the last 6 or 7 years. But we have types at the beginning of it, so we take 3 string parameters, and the first 2 are you're required to pass in, and the last one, if you don't pass one in, it just defaults to hello. We can do things like split. We can do various operations inside the language, inside the center of it. And then kind of the heart of what the plans do is call a function that's called run task. And run task takes the first argument is a task name. In this case, the task is exercise 7, right? And the tasks are themselves contained inside of modules, and they use the same module namespace as classes and define. So it's all pretty consistent. And the next argument is a list of nodes to act on, and then the rest of the arguments will just be whatever parameters that task takes. So again, you can link these things together. You can do anything that you can do inside the Puppet language, inside of your plan, modulo those things that again produce a catalog or kind of don't make sense in the context of building up a list of tasks and running those on hosts. And then run command, obviously that exposes the same primitive that you can do from the Bolt command line to just run a command on a remote system. So we'll be running through this today, and I don't have the URL up here, but we'll put it up in a minute of where you can clone the Git repo that has all of the hands-on lab or the kind of self-paced lessons through there. So, and that's kind of the whirlwind tour. We have a bunch of other content throughout the conf that's going to be talking about tasks, and my request again to everybody is let's make this huge. Let's think about modules that you use, modules you maintain. What do you wish that they could do that don't make sense with the idea of state management? What have you wished that a module could do that involved like either linking some execs together to try to do something that looked like an application deployment, but if one of them blew up, your whole thing was left in a smoking ruin on the ground. Like those are the kinds of things that we really expect people to, feel like tasks is a natural fit for those kinds of problems. Some other examples are like updating firmware on network devices. Now, updating firmware is like a one-time thing that you do. It's not something that you're going to, continually enforce state on. But Puppet made it really hard previous to this to, build a firmware update into a Puppet run. So tasks are kind of, again, a natural fit there. We have some sample tasks that are going up today and tomorrow into some of the Puppet Labs maintained modules, like into MySQL. So if you want to restart a database in MySQL, again, that's not something, restarting database is not something you want to do every time Puppet runs. Obviously, that would be a terrible idea. But once in a while, you got to restart it. And so it'd be nice to have a way to do that that's programmatic and that's not just like logging onto the machine or running a KSH script that your DBAs gave you. We also, if you're interested and you want to hack on Bolt itself, there's some interesting possibilities there. It is a single Ruby gem. And again, in that theme of bringing simple back, we really wanted to make it really easy to get started to work on the framework itself, to work on the tool itself, to add new capabilities to it that we didn't think of. My request would be if you get a crazy idea and it's going to take like 5,000 lines of code, come and talk to somebody before you write the code instead of afterwards. It makes it much more likely that it'll actually get in. But we really want to lower the bar to contributions for Bolt, so it's all kind of like Factor was in the early days, right? When it was a super easy way to get started working in the Puppet ecosystem. And as such, we're going to be using kind of GitHub issues as a triage mechanism for bringing in issues into Bolt. We don't be offended if we mirror the issue into Jira. Our project managers tend to get very anxious and upset if they don't have Jira tickets for everything that we do. But yeah, that GitHub contribution workflow is so low friction. We really wanted to encourage that. So file GitHub issues and pull requests, and we'll just work through it that way. And we'll show the layout for how we're going to do the task or the hacking tables throughout the day. But there's going to be a whole bunch of task experts and folks that you can talk to if you want to work on your modules. But yeah, so please dig into it. I love feedback on it. So far, the PS folks, the education folks, the field folks, the customers that we've talked to and we've given demos for that have worked on it have been like, oh my God, this is great. Why didn't you do this 5 years ago? And I'm like, I can't solve that. I don't have a time machine, but we have it here today, and I hope that all of y'all like it as much as we do and as much as we've enjoyed working on it. All right, that's that. I'm gonna pause for just a moment because I need some water, but I'm going to go on to talk a little bit about some of the non-tasks related things that we've been working on. Not all work at Puppet has come to a complete stop as we've been building this product. Most of it has, but not all of it has. So I'll talk a little bit about the platform. Show of hands, how many of y'all out there are running some Puppet 5 or running Puppet 5 already or have downloaded and running it? It looks like 10%-ish, so that's all right. How many of y'all are running Puppet 4, including any of the PEs that have a year number on them? Cool, that's like 80%. How many of y'all are running Puppet 3.x? Keep your hands up if you're running Puppet 3.x and you know that it is EOL'd. Okay. So again, I'd love to help you join us here in the future. It's cool. We have jetpacks. We have flying cars. We have a non-carbon-based economy. No, not yet. I wish. But yeah, so we released Puppet 5 earlier this year, and it was in July, I want to say. And Puppet 5, the headline here is that we've made things simple in the sense that we're doing all the version numbers for the Puppet agent, Puppet server, Puppet DB are all 5. There's no longer a mishmash of it's Puppet 4, but it's in the Puppet agent 1, but you need a Puppet server 3 in order to work with it. All I can say about that was it seemed like a good idea at the time. Like it turned out to not be such a great idea, so we fixed it. Yes. The platform is going out as a unitary whole. So we do releases of each of the components together, and we do it on a time-based mechanism every month. And we sort of assign a SEMVer compliant version number to it, depending on what the level of change was that went into those. There will not be breaking change in those until we're ready to do another major version, which should be sometime next year. But so it's either a feature version or it's a patch release of the platform overall, but either way, it'll come out every month. And oh, Jesse, thank you so much. You're a god among men. Thank you. They all got together, which is kind of a neat thing. We know that the latest versions of all of the releases, the platform components are going to work together. You don't have to, mix and match different versions to make sure that you're getting something that works. And compatibility has been huge with Puppet 5. My mission in life a couple of years ago was to get everybody upgraded to Puppet 4. Clearly, I've failed. Going to keep trying, but now it's to Puppet 5. But one of the things that I wanted to hold a really strong line on to make sure that it was easy as possible for people to upgrade was to keep backwards compatibility as far back as we could. So 3.x agents can check into a 4 master, they can check into a 5 master. Any code that you wrote that works under Puppet 4 will also work under Puppet 5. Now, there's still the 3 to 4 code level changes that you'll have to go through. We've tried to minimize those. If you haven't checked out either the catalog preview module that Puppet developed or the Octo catalog diff that Kevin Paulis and the team over at GitHub developed, check those out because they make it way easier. And if you feel like you have a mountain to climb to get your code onto Puppet 4, try those tools out, and they may tell you, well, actually, it's like a few lines of code that you need to change, and oh, by the way, we can do it for you. So things have really advanced since the early days of Puppet 4 in terms of the tooling and the ability to come forward and to, again, join us here in the future. So please give it a try. Going back to this theme of simplicity, we tried to expand that through the platform. So we, again, and then something that seemed like a good idea that we, probably the idea was good. Our execution was not what we had planned on. So we had this idea of Puppet collections where you could download the different platform components. We've abandoned that. The new repositories where you download Puppet 5 are just called Puppet. Now, if you want to stay on a particular major version, there's a repo that's Puppet 5, and you will always get Puppet 5 as long as that's updated. But you can just add a repository that's called Puppet, and you'll get the platform components from it. One thing that we've restarted recently, too, is to work with distributions to make sure that the versions of Puppet that are available in common distributions are up to date. They're not M3.x. They're more modern. The most recent example of this is we've been working with the Fedora team to get Factor in Fedora updated to the C++-based Factor, which again has been out for a couple of years, but just due to the tooling complexity and some other things, the Fedora one stayed at Factor 2, which is EOL'd. So we're working with them to bring it up. And if anyone here is a distro maintainer or is interested in bringing the version of Puppet in your distribution that you care about up to date, I'd love to talk to you. Especially the Gen 2 folks, let's bring that one up. And again, as far as the contribution complexity, we really wanted to make bulk contributions easier and maybe spread that simplicity across to the other projects too. I mean, it's really hard to look at the connection between a GitHub issue being opened, a pull request that fixes that issue, and then merging the pull request also closes that issue. There's something about that just sort of makes my life a little easier and makes me happy. And I'd love to figure out how to incorporate that into our workflow a little bit more broadly. No promises, but after you've seen it in action a couple of times, it's hard not to think that that's a superior way to run things. The developer experience I mentioned at the beginning, and we'll have a lot more about this today, but we've been really trying to focus on making things easy for developers, for module contributors to get started, to get productive, and to get their changes in and merged and have really good high-quality changes. Another show of hands here, how many out here are using the PDK or have used the PDK to do module development? Awesome, that's like 20% in the room. That's really cool. We're going to talk more about the PDK. If you haven't heard of it, we put together a collection of some of the open source tools that people were using already to do module development, to do unit testing, to do linting, and bundled them together into a single download that runs on your workstation, runs on Windows, and gives you a great development experience for adding new classes into existing modules, for developing new modules, for doing tests, those kinds of things, so that you can have a really high quality module. I mentioned the resource API a moment ago. We're going to talk about that this afternoon. How many of you here, I'm going to keep it interactive so that you don't all fall asleep on me. I know it's early. How many of you in here have written a type and or provider in your modules? Awesome. That's like 80, 90%. How many of you enjoyed that experience? Is that Tim Sharpe? God damn it. So we've been working on a resource API, and some of you, I think, were involved in the conversations. We tried to do this development in the open. I know Trevor chimed in on this on the mailing list thread. But we really want to make that development experience. Types and providers are so central to what Puppet is and what it does, and make it really easy to, the idea is to make it really easy to extend Puppet's capabilities to manage new types of things. That has not been as easy as it should be in the past, and the Resource API is a deliberate attempt to address that complexity by making something that on the type side is purely data-driven, and on the provider side is a lot cleaner and has an actual published formal API instead of having to guess what the meta-programmed simple DSL does down deep in the guts of Puppet land. So we'll talk more about that this afternoon, but again, the idea here is let's do something that we can build alongside of our existing stuff. We're certainly not going to stop any of the existing types and providers out there in the world from working, but let's build something alongside of it that's simple, that's easy to use, and that's really easy to get started with. I wanted to give a big shout out here too to Vox Populi, who, so some of whom are in the room, some of whom hopefully are watching. Hopefully Igor's out there. Peace, man. Vox Populi are a collection of module contributors, authors, and just interested parties who want to make the Puppet ecosystem better. They've taken on 136 repositories that were orphaned, abandoned, just generally in need of some love, and have taken over maintainership of them, migrated them to their namespace, both on GitHub and on the Puppet Forge, and just continue to, like give them love, dust them off, improve them, make sure they work with the latest versions of Puppet. And it's really, again, really easy to get started. If you have a module that you want to, does something almost what you want but isn't quite there, and it's under a Vox Populi namespace, I strongly encourage you to hop on their channel on Slack, hop on their group. There's going to be somebody there who's like, oh yeah, we'll help you out with that, no big deal, and get your pull request merged and get a new version of the module out. So hopefully a lot of folks who have, maybe forked versions of some of the common modules from way back in the day, if you weren't able to get those, to get back upstream with them, hopefully you'll be able to do that with, if they're taken over by Vox. So awesome work there. So that's all the time I have, and I just finally wanted to say thank you so much to everybody here and everybody in, again, remote, and everybody in the wider community. We had kind of like a t-shirt contest to see who could dig out the oldest t-shirt. I feel like I might have won. This is from 2009. This is from the first Puppet Camp, and that was where I first came into contact with some of the folks that are out here, Gary, Nigel, Stahnke, some of the other folks. Oops, it's beeping at me, telling me I'm over time. It's okay. It's okay, little box. And that's what caused me to fall in love with not just Puppet as a tool, but Puppet as a community. And it's great to see that spirit is still going strong here. So thank you very much for being here. That's all from me.
Thank you, Eric. So we're just going to get our next speaker up here real quickly. I hope that you're super pumped about all this new news. We're definitely excited to share it with you all. Is thumbs up if you're doing okay, like temperature-wise? Yes? Any thumbs down? A little warm? Okay, all right, noted. I will get on that. So I would love to know how many folks, it's not too early to start asking for more hands to be raised, right? How many folks have come to a contributor summit before? Yay. Well, welcome to those of you who it's your first one. I won't make you raise your hand. But I just love seeing this room so full. I'll probably say that like 5 more times. So we do have a couple things coming up in relation to the announcement today. We're going to do a virtual Puppet user group in November, and there will be a slide going around, not now, but later, about that. So definitely there's a virtual Puppet user group meetup page, and you can check that out. and we'd love for you to tune in, or for folks who weren't able to attend to tune in. We also have our online community hack day coming up in December. It's December 7th. So we'd love for you all to put it on your calendars and plan to spend some time in Slack on Pound Puppet Hack working on projects together. So it's like the online version of Contributor Summit, which is super fun. And I think we're about ready, maybe. There's always some little AV snafu. So tonight is the welcome reception at 6 o'clock in the Continental Ballroom. Correct me if I'm wrong. So definitely make plans to be there. That should be fun. And then we have our party tomorrow night. And Lisa said that's going to be really awesome. I think it might be at like a discotheque or something like that. So if you have any sequins, this is your chance. I hope you packed them. Yeah. So I think we're ready to go. You feeling good, Nick?
Yep.
Almost.
Loading.
Loading.
There we go.
So
Okay.
next up, yay, success. Next up we have senior software engineer Nick Lewis, and he's going to be speaking to you about how to turn a script into a task. Please welcome him.
Perfect. Hi, so yeah, I'm Nick Lewis, an engineer working on tasks, and I want to talk about how to go about turning scripts you might have, as Eric said, in your tilde sandbox directory into Puppet tasks so that you can run them within this system and build on them. So first, let's talk again about just what a task is. A task is any single action you want to perform in your infrastructure. It's the unit of automation work. And that idea of a unit is important because we will build on that later. And so yeah, there are things that you can't necessarily model with Puppet, but they're still individual. They have inputs and outputs, and you want to put them together in interesting ways, just not ways that look like Puppet resources. So structurally, a task is any single executable file that lives in a Puppet module in a particular place. And so at the most simple, a task file exits 0 if it succeeded and non-zero if it failed. That's how we tell what happened. And it takes parameters. Eric already showed an example of the sort of metadata you can say about the parameters. Those are passed on standard in as a JSON object, and it can return structured output on standard out as a JSON object also. And then yeah, there's the metadata that you can add to describe in detail what the task does, both for humans and for machines. So this is great. It means that you can write your tasks in Bash, PowerShell, Ruby, Python, PHP. You can compile a binary if you want. It'd be a little weird. Or you can even write a Puppet manifest, a single executable Puppet apply, which is very fun. But actually, it can be even simpler than that because most of those things are optional. We want it to be as easy as it possibly can be to get up and running using the task framework. And so if you don't want to deal with JSON for input, that's fine. We have environment variables. If you don't want JSON for output, that's fine. You can just print a string. We'll turn it into JSON. We know how to do that. And if you don't want metadata, you can just leave it out and you won't get any of the benefits of metadata. So I recommend having it, but we'll talk in a little bit about what those benefits are and why you might want to do that. What that means is that it's very, very easy to adapt any existing script that you have sitting around to something that you can run with a task. So suppose that I have some simple, in this case, a plain text web app running from HTTPD that I run just from source. I might have this script to update it, which gets a version on the command line, so I run it like update app.sh 1.0. This will download that. I have it in a Git repo on GitHub. It'll download that, unpack it, and then just update a symlink to point at that new version. This is a very simplified example, but I think it's fairly representative of many basic applications. And so this is a script. It's not runnable as a task because of this CLI parameter. But it's pretty easy to make it runnable as a task, which is to take that from an environment variable. In this case, that's PT version, where version is the name of my parameter, as I would put in the metadata. And PT is a prefix that just stands for Puppet tasks, so that you don't have, say, a path parameter and get yourself into trouble. And now this is runnable as a task. It can take a version parameter. And in this case, I added a little bit of output here just to provide some human message that says, I upgraded to version whatever. But you can see no JSON, which is important because this is a bash script. And I really don't want to do that. And so the last thing that I need to do to run it is I need to put it into a Puppet module. So in this case, you see I've got the aptly named PuppetConf 2017 module, where I have a manifest directory that has some Puppet code to manage my application already, and I can just put tasks right next to it. So here's my upgrade.sh. And so how do I run that? That is bolt task run. So Eric mentioned this earlier. In this case, it's bolt task run, the name of the task I want, with the module name in front of it. So that's PuppetConf 2017 upgrade, and then a version that I want to upgrade to. It didn't fit on the slide, so I left it off, but there's also a -- nodes, which is the list of nodes to run it on. And so let's check that out. I will enhance. See if I can. Hey, it works. OK, I actually want to show you my application. I'll enhance that. I'm not a web developer. Hello, PuppetConf. It's not a lot of fun to upgrade if you don't see what I upgrade to. I ran the wrong one. Control-C, it's fine. Live one-handed demos are great. And if the internet holds up, you can see upgraded to version 0.5.0, which is, if I refresh, this little Bootstrap website that I put together about what tasks and plans are. You don't need to read it. I'm explaining it right now. That apparently took me out of prison. It doesn't want to move. I'll go on without notes. OK, so that task was pretty simple. I just took an existing script and basically adapted it to meet the minimum requirement to run as a task. But there are some enhancements that I can make to this. In this case, I want it to output something structured because I want this to be consumable from within, a plan and other systems. So I have, in this case, I am in fact printing JSON from Bash. This is why you don't want to do that. But I've updated this script to get the previous version that was installed and to print a message about the upgrade, to print an object that has what the previous version was and what the new version is in a structured form so that I can tell what happened. Actually, I do want those. Oh, well. It's going to be a bit of a surprise. So the other thing that I can add to this is metadata. So this version of the task doesn't do any input validation. I have these question marks here, which will cause my script to fail if that parameter isn't set, but that's about it. And that's just a bashism. So what happens if I get invalid input, if I get, someone passes me an array or a number or any other sort of thing? I can avoid that by defining metadata. So remember, metadata is optional if you don't want the benefits of metadata, which are, I now can specify that it accepts this parameter. Any other parameters will be rejected. And this parameter is a string. In this case, it's a Puppet string. This uses Puppet types. And so if that parameter isn't passed or it isn't a string, it will be rejected, which makes it a lot easier to write safe tasks, especially in languages like Bash, where you otherwise would have to worry about, is this single quoted, double quoted, injection, et cetera. But I can just say it needs to be a string. And then I can provide some human-oriented information that says what this task actually does and what this parameter does. And so this is a single metadata file for each task. So if I have a module with 5 tasks, I would have 5 metadata files. And that metadata file lives right next to the task. So this task is called upgrade. So the metadata file is called upgrade.json. It's pretty straightforward. And so tasks are really great because you can take your existing scripts and adapt them, or you can write whole new things that do the operational tasks you want, and you can put them alongside your Puppet code. So you have a single module that might have the Puppet code to manage an application, and then whatever operational tasks you need to run on an ad hoc basis or otherwise not associated with Puppet necessarily. But you can store that, you can version it the same way, you can share it within your organization and with the community. But the bulk of the power for tasks comes in putting them together into task plans. And so a task plan is, as Eric said, a Puppet script, effectively. It's Puppet language, but not in the form that we write it for generating Puppet catalogs. And these, whereas a task is the smallest unit, it is a single thing to do on a single node, a plan is a multi-node workflow that might have multiple steps. A good example of this is like deploying a multi-tier web app where you need to migrate a database and then upgrade a series of web servers and then maybe modify your load balancer config. And that involves going back and forth between multiple nodes and doing things in a particular sequence that is extremely difficult to fit into Puppet's model of the world. And so plans are mostly a series of task invocations. Run this task on these nodes, run this other task on that node, run this other task here, and so on. But you can also run arbitrary scripts, which are effectively anything that doesn't fit the task shape, that doesn't have that same sort of input or output. You can run arbitrary commands from within a task plan, which is really great if you have just like a one-liner that you want to run that you don't want to bother putting into a task on its own because it only applies to this one plan. And they can run other plans, which is one of my favorite features, so that you can have, it's really easy to build up a sophisticated like multi-tier deployment workflow, potentially reusing the same plan across multiple instances of your application. And so this is an example plan. This one just builds on the previous upgrade task that I showed, and it wraps it in a plan that just runs that upgrade task on a node and then runs a HipChat task that sends a message saying that that task completed successfully. And so this, it looks, again, a lot like if you've written a Puppet define or class, then this should look very familiar. We have the keyword plan, but then it's otherwise named just like you would expect, which is the module name, : name of the plan. Then it has a set of parameters. These are all required. What host to upgrade on. This plan only works on a single node, but it's easy to write plans that work on multiple nodes or multiple groups of nodes. It takes, again, the version of the application, and in this case, it takes a token to use to send a HipChat message. And here you can see the power of being able to get the result of running that task and find out what actually happened. So here we get the previous version, a new version, and then build up a string, never minding the fact that that's what we were doing before I turned it into JSON. So we're getting back to a message. But then it invokes this HipChat task to send a message that says, hey, I upgraded this version so that the rest of your team knows what you're doing. And so, unsurprisingly, plans live in a plans directory right next to the tasks directory. And so if it's great to be able to put your manifests and your tasks together, it's even better to have your manifests, your tasks, and your plans all together so that you can have a single module for an application that has the Puppet code to manage it, tasks to operate on it, and plans to orchestrate complex workflows across the whole application. And again, you get the benefits of being able to version those, being able to share them the same as you share the rest of your Puppet code, internally and externally. So here's just another example of a plan that does a little bit more than running tasks. This one runs arbitrary commands, you can see. So this is actually the plan that I used to set up my demo instance for this demo. In this case, it runs a couple of commands to install Puppet so that it can run the package task and the service task to install and set up HTTPD. So it's important to mention that Bolt does not require Puppet at all to be installed on the agents. That is, you can run it on any system that you can access over SSH or WinRM. However, the package and service tasks do require Puppet, so I'm installing it here before I have that. And then I have just one last example of a task, of a plan. So here is that enhanced enough? So here's just to run through an example that demonstrates like really the power of being able to write plans as Puppet code, which here's a plan that deploys a multi-node app that has a set of app servers and then a load balancer that they all sit behind. So it does things like even bigger. So here it runs an install task on the app servers to install the new version of the application, but not start it. And then it checks with this helper method OK, which indicates whether or not that task ran successfully on all nodes. And if it didn't, it fails. And then it will gather some stats from HA proxy on the load balancer using this HA proxy task with a get stat action to find out how many open connections there are to the load balancer and use that to decide whether or not it's safe to do this application deployment right now. And then it will, so this actually upgrades each app server independently. So it does one to completion, then the next to completion, then the next to completion by running, again, some HA proxy stats to find out whether it's working correctly and has open connections. And then it drains connections from that back end on the load balancer. And again, at each step, it's checking, was this successful, if not fail? And it could do something more interesting if it wanted to and say, well, this wasn't successful, so I will adapt in some way. Or even call out to another plan. You know, this is my handle failure, in this case, plan. And then it will restart the service on that node. Then do some health checks to make sure it's working. And if it is working, then it will put it back in the load balancer. And then it will continue on to the next node. And so that's, without going into great detail about the specifics of this plan, that's an example of the kinds of things that you can do by stringing together a set of tasks with decision making and checking, you know, what the results are. So you can, this would be extremely difficult to do modeled in Puppet, but it's very straightforward to write. Again, it's still in Puppet code, so if that's what you spend a lot of time writing, it will look very familiar and should be fairly clear how this is working. And you can, again, put it right next to whatever role or profile code manages your application itself so that you have a single module that is where to go to find everything involved in that application. And so there are going to be a lot of opportunities to learn more about tasks during PuppetConf. You can find the docs on the website. There's should be available now. There's going to be Puppet Task hands-on lab during Contributor Summit and also several on Thursday. Those are in the Golden Gate Ballroom 6 through 8, which are, I think, right across the way over there. There's a design jam about multi-step task workflows to help understand a little bit better what kinds of task plans you might write. There will be some demos at the demos/user tests at the Puppet Test Pilots booth in the exhibitor pavilion, and also people staffing the Puppet Walk-Up Clinic if you have questions about that. There's also going to be, and this didn't make it onto my slide, the virtual pug focused on tasks that Meg was mentioning. So there should be a lot of opportunities to get your hands on tasks throughout PuppetConf and learn a little bit more about how they work and start to contribute. That's all. Great.
Thanks, Nick. So by now you know the drill. We'll get the next speaker up for you shortly.
I tried to high-five Nick, and it didn't go very well.
Yeah, so we have a couple Puppet user group things going on this week. So tonight at the welcome reception, we're going to have an info table. You just need to look for the PUG balloons. I think they are either gold or silver, so it will be easy to find. If you're interested in learning more about our Puppet User Group program, that's the place to come. And we'll have stickers, so come grab a sticker, come say hello. Also, we're doing a lunch, a pug lunch, and that's Thursday, and you can find it on the PuppetConf schedule. We'd love for you to attend. It's 12:30 to 2:15. We're just going to gather together folks that are in Puppet user groups that help organize, also folks who are interested in all of the above. So please come in and have lunch with us. But I think Lucy's ready. Awesome. So without further... Oops, we lost the mic.
Hey.
So without further ado, I would like to introduce Lucy Wyman. She's a software engineer at Puppet, and she's going to be talking to you about contributing best practices. Please welcome her.
All right, so who's excited to write their first task? Yeah, all right. But before we go, all willy-nilly writing tasks, I want to provide you with some guidelines for contributing to open source and making sure that people are able to use your tasks as easily as possible. So I know that a lot of this might be redundant for open source veterans, but hopefully it'll provide you with a checklist of things to make sure that you or your friends, I know it's not you, make sure your friends are doing. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing I want to go over is why contributing to open source software is really important for keeping the open source community vibrant and also for you as an individual contributor. So one of my favorite and most compelling reasons for contributing to open source is because you have an itch to scratch. You see a problem, you have a unique solution to it, and you have the ability to build a tool to solve it. And I think this is the most compelling reason because you're really personally invested in the contributions you're making and know the impact that the code you're writing is having. Similarly, giving back to a project that you use and love, such as Puppet, is a really great way to contribute to open source because, again, you're very personally invested in the project that you are contributing to, and you know the impact that that project can have because you use and love it, hopefully. Another really great reason for contributing to open source is learning something new. If you're looking to get started writing Rust, what better way is there to interact with real live Rust developers than to start contributing to a Rust project or a project that's written in Rust? That provides a really good way for you to get started, again, asking people for help, maybe writing something simple, but something that people are actually going to use that's not just hello world in Rust and then you delete it and then you're not sure what to do next. Lastly, being part of a community. Software is about so much more than just code. It's really about the people who write and use it. And being part of an open source community is a really great way to connect with other software developers who are as passionate about code as you are, and especially about the specific projects that you're working in. So again, if you're a system administrator, interacting with the Puppet community is a really great way to interact with people who experience the same problems that you do and have the same triumphs and that you can really connect with in a meaningful way. All right, hopefully we're all convinced open source is awesome. But contributing to open source software does not just have to be about code. Filing bugs, I think, is actually one of the most valuable things you can do to contribute to really any software, but also open source software. Oftentimes we make software for our perceived users, but that's not always the people who are actually using it. And so filing a bug is a great way to provide feedback to the developers to help them make whatever code they're writing better and more usable for the user, which is the reason we write software in the first place, really. Writing documentation is also a huge thing you can do to contribute to open source. If you don't have documentation for your code, then it's a lot harder for people to use it. And writing documentation doesn't necessarily have to be like contributing to the official like Django documentation or something. It can just be writing a blog post about something cool that you did, a unique way you solved a problem, or even just answering a question on Stack Overflow. Like, how many times have people like run into a problem and found the answer on Stack Overflow? Yeah, that totally counts as documentation. Similarly, answering community questions in a variety of other channels can also be really helpful. If you're on Slack, if you're on IRC, if you're on any of the Puppet mailing lists, all of those are really great places to help other Puppet developers be successful, or any other open source project really that you're using and passionate about. Help other people be successful in what they're doing. Also getting involved in any local meetups. Again, community is a huge part of open source and of software development in general. Getting involved is really fun and can really add meaning to the work that you're doing. And specific to Puppet is Vox, I'm not really sure how to say it, Populi? But becoming a part of Vox Populi, it's very easy. Just go to like voxpopuli.com. It will have all of the like resources for getting started there. And that's a really great way if you're not sure how to start contributing to open source and Puppet specifically. That's a really great community to be a part of and start participating in. Okay, so that checklist I talked about, let's go through it really fast. Document your code. Again, I know that everyone here always documents everything that they write, but tell your friends to document their code. People can't really use the tools that you're creating if you don't tell them how to like install it, provide examples of how to use it, tell them about all of the parameters and settings that they can adjust. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've had to like read the Selenium source code just to figure out like how to make a specific thing happen. And that's like not super great. So making sure that you talk about what your code does, how to install example use cases. Yeah, everything on the slide. Excellent things to document. You also want to try to keep the code that you're writing in open source modular. This is so that other people who don't have the exact same problem you do, but a similar problem, can still use your tool for their specific use case. So if I have a problem that requires a relatively complex solution, ideally I would break that solution up into smaller, more modular parts and write tasks or modules, whatever the case may be, that can fix those smaller parts, and then hopefully other people can use my like more generic, more modular tool for their own purposes. And this kind of follows the Unix philosophy of only do one thing and do it well. This link literally just goes to like, there's a Wikipedia Unix philosophy page. So yeah, trying to be generic, trying to be tool agnostic as well. You won't always be using the same stack that you are currently necessarily. So trying to make things like OS agnostic, stuff like that, really good. And a good code smell to sniff for is hard coding. If you find yourself hard coding a lot of like file paths or other things, then that's a good smell that you're not keeping things as modular as maybe you should, or as generic. All right, keeping sensitive data safe. Usually a really good common solution to this is environment variables, still totally great. You can also use hierodata. That's kind of Puppet's way of separating the data that your Puppet is using from the code itself. And then you also want to make sure that you include any sensitive files in a git ignore. I think that this is the most common way that we see SSH keys ending up on GitHub. And if you search for ID_RSA, you will be shocked. at the number of private keys that are just out there for your use. So yeah, try not to be those people. Make sure that you license your software. How many people maintain a Puppet module or any other open source tool? And how many of those have licenses on them? Awesome. You guys are all-stars. Making sure that you license your code gives other people explicit permission to use and contribute to your software in specific ways. And if you're not sure how to get started with licensing your project, this link goes to choosealicense.org. That's a really great place to learn about the different licenses, what they mean, what they do, how to include them with your code, etc. But licensing is very important for open source software. Just because you don't have a license does not mean that it's like implicitly open source. Don't assume that people will know that it's open source just because it's online. Make sure that you tell people how they can use your software. Style guides. In the Puppet Developer Kit, as Eric mentioned, there's a Puppet linter, which is especially helpful for adhering to the Puppet style guides, but there's also a more human-readable version, the Puppet language style guide. And in general, again, for any open source project you're contributing to, there's going to be some kind of style guide that you should try to make sure that you're adhering to for whatever language you're writing in, whatever tool, etc. This just makes code especially readable, which is very important for open source software because, again, your users will probably find themselves reading your code if it's not documented. And it's also really important for maintainability. You might not always be the lead maintainer of whatever code you're writing, and if you have a style guide or adhering to that, then it makes it a lot easier for other people to come in and contribute to that code base or later to maintain it. All right, testing. I know that this is kind of a cherry on top situation, but if you can, testing is a great way to enable any contributors to your open source code to know that they're not introducing breaking changes into your code. So even really basic unit testing can go a long way for helping people safely contribute to your project. Again, Puppet Developer Kit has RSpec Puppet included in it, and that can really help you with testing your Puppet code. And there's also this handy dandy RSpec for beginners. I think if you just Google that, it'll come up a blog post on getting started unit testing Puppet. If you want to communicate with the open source Puppet community, then we're on #Puppet and #PuppetDev on irc.freenode.net. We have a mailing list, a community Slack, a Jira, a Twitter, whatever your preferred channel is, we're on it. Here's a handful of resources. I think in my head these slides were available online. I don't know if they actually are. But imagine you can click on these. That's all I have. Great.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Lucy. So hopefully y'all are up to speed. I know that was a quick overview, but Lucy's here all day, so come and find her if you have any questions. So we're going to get our next speaker up. I was correct about the welcome reception is in Continental Ballroom, and the party is at the Temple. I wrote it down. Hold on. Dimple Nightclub. Yeah, just get on the bus. They'll get you there. Don't stress. So are all of you on the Slack, I hope? Yes? If not, this is a great opportunity to join. Use this time. We did get the temperature corrected, hopefully. Things are more comfortable for you. Yeah. Nice. Okay. All right, so we're going to try and stay on time, which we have managed to do, which is super exciting for me. I know all of you aren't that excited about that, but for me, this is an exciting moment. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lindsey Smith. He's a senior product manager at Puppet. Please welcome him.
Hi, everyone. Lindsey Smith. I'm actually really excited about the little wire microphones. When I was a kid, I took a wire coat hanger and bent it into the shape and put it on my head, and I would crawl under our living room coffee table and play astronaut, sitting on the back, and the bottom of the coffee table was my control panel and my mercury capsule, so this is kind of exciting. I can keep talking while they deal with AV. So I'm on the Puppet Developer Experience team. A lot of the folks that are going to talk after me are also on the team. So last year at this time, we kind of hinted like, hey, we're trying to get a group of Puppet that's explicitly focused on making your lives as code writers and code contributors and code consumers easy. And I think things we're going to talk about now are the things that we have. Yes, we did do that. Yes, we are some of the human beings on that team, and talk about the things that we have done in the past year. And so sort of like our mission in life is make it easier for you to contribute code, have a place for you to contribute to the community, try to motivate people and incentivize people to contribute to the community. And then on the consuming side, just have their really vibrant ecosystem so that you can go and find that Nginx module that works just right for you or whatever that is, or as the themes with tasks. Yeah, let's see. Ooh, I almost clicked close. That would have been real bad. Huh? No. Okay. This is not my laptop. James, do you want to? I'll keep talking. But the team is explicitly focused on you, and so that as consumers of content, that there is a lot of that content there that's high quality. You can find what you need. A lot of the things that that Lucy talked about, those practices of making it easy for you to document your code, make things easy to find. So the big thing we want to talk about is the Puppet development kit. I think so Eris polled the group a little earlier. There were some users. Raise your hand if you've at least heard of it. Puppet development kit. Awesome. That's like, yeah. Before today, before this morning. All right. Thank you. That's like 75%-ish. I'd say that's really awesome. So we released the first version in August. Here we go. And we actually released a new version this morning that supports tasks. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So we're going to get to a demo very quickly. But our goal is to be the shortest path to better modules. We want you to be able to ramp up development environments very quickly, because we know historically that's super hard, especially if you have maybe a Windows workstation where Ruby can be kind of troublesome. We want you to easily get started with best practices. And we want you to, let me be the first person at PuppetConf 2017 to say shift left. We want you to shift left on finding and fixing issues. And maybe if you don't know what shift left means, if you imagine on the left-hand side, it's hands on keyboard, commit code, it goes to dev and test, staging and production. It moves from sort of like left to right. We want you to find issues as far to the left as possible, where it's cheapest to find them. Like you don't want to catch something in production, because you've gone through weeks, maybe weeks of work that you have to go back to the beginning and start. If you can catch that stuff early, it's way better. So PDK's goals are help you to shift left. And as I said, we released version 1.2. So when you go gem install Bolt, you should also go to puppet.com and download the new version of PDK. And focus, who's got focus? Yeah. Wanted to give you one package. I mean, a lot of you are probably like longtime Puppet users, and you probably have gone and found Puppet Lint and RSpec Puppet and various tools and integrated them in various times into your workflow. We packaged all that stuff together into one bundle. There's native packaging for Windows or whatever. You just get the MSI and it installs everything. And then there's one unified CLI that gives you kind of an interface to all of those things. You don't necessarily need to go and learn the details of each one of those tools. So maybe you can consider yourself a Puppet old-timer, and you're kind of thinking, it's like, well, I went through this pain 3 years ago. I've already done this. Maybe you're a little newer into the Puppet ecosystem, but think what we hear repeatedly is, oh yeah, what I'm doing a lot now is onboarding people into developing Puppet. We're expanding our use of Puppet in the organization, and there's like a dozen people that I'm trying to get writing Puppet code. Like, this is what you want. This will save you quite possibly days. Multiple people told me, so it's like, yeah, when we do this, it's like 1 or 2 days per person, per laptop to get them set up to write Puppet code. This should be like a 5-minute thing, and you just install this, and you just move on with life, and they'd actually start being productive. So this huge time saver, if you're one of those organizations where you're trying to expand your use of Puppet, or you're consultant, or that sort of thing, where you're helping bring Puppet into an organization. And we want the result to be better modules, right? That we a lot of the things that Lucy talked about. Improved module skeleton. It has that nice git ignore. It's pre-configured for git, app, bear, and Travis, and various tools that you're likely to encounter. A very fleshed out git ignore, things like that. Things that when you're new to Puppet, you're just not going to know what's supposed to go in there, so we just do it for you. And then the things that actively does for you, the syntax checking, the linting, and the unit testing. And the new feature of version 1.2 is new tasks. And Tim is going to show you that in just a second. And for the details, these are the tools that are under the hood. They're sort of like the check your code at rest. Does it compile? Does it pass lint? Rubocop does the metadata JSON look okay? And then the sort of the active stuff like the RSpec Puppet Vax to do unit testing. Point being, you catch those things earlier. And again, someone else I talked to, it's like, we have all these new people that we're trying to skill up with Puppet, but gosh, like 80% of their commits don't compile. Like, that's really terrible. There's a pretty simple solution for not checking in code that doesn't compile if you have something like this. So like just adopting this for that reason alone would be a really big win for them. So with that, I'm going to bring up Tim Sharpe, longtime super contributor, creator of RSpec Puppet. Rodjek, is that how you, I don't even know, is that how you pronounce it? That's what I always say in my head. I mean, there's nobody walks around reading their GitHub, plans. But Tim is on the team. He's one of the people that help us build this thing, and he's gonna show it off.
Folks that haven't used it. No problem. I hope the luck. Creating a new module. Oh, actually. So you can see, whoa, that's. Yeah, so you can see you can generate a whole bunch of things with the PDK currently. Classes, defined types, modules, tasks. So we'll start with creating a module. James, how do you change the font size in Windows?
This is why you're supposed to prep first. All right. There you go.
Awesome. Okay. We'll just call this test. So it's going to run you through some short questions to pre-populate the metadata.json, so your module is going to be all ready to go to upload to the Forge if you want to do that. Okay, so yeah, just the operating system selector here is used for RSpec Puppet facts. So when you're running your unit tests, it'll pull down the appropriate facts for whatever operating system you select. So, well, add Solaris as well for fun. Okay. So you got pretty standard sort of module layout that you should be all familiar with some additions. Travis, CI, app there, etc. is all pre-configured, ready to go. You just have to log in and enable it in your account. So let's create a basic class. Wow, cat works on Windows. Cool. So, very basic stuff for the skeleton. I can go through all the static validations. It's running Rubicop, metadata, JSON lint, Puppet lint. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, we've got no tasks. Cool. So we can also, very easily run your unit tests. It's not the fastest. They're successful. All right, and the new feature, of course, is we can create tasks now. For example. So what that's done is it's pre-populated that new metadata JSON for the task for you with some very basic contents. So that should be, pretty decent to get going for whatever your task is going to be as an example. And it's also created a example shell script, which doesn't have a huge amount in it, but you can just open it up and start typing out your batch script as you normally would. And yeah, I guess that's about it. We're going to be obviously adding more features as time goes on. But yeah, I'm going to hand over to Bryan now. Oh, no, James.
All right. Well, we thought we would, do what production does, plan for months and then do everything at the last minute and figure out as you go along. So today, don't mean to start an editor war, but I'm going to talk about what we've been doing with the VSCode extension. Well, what's VS Code? VS Code is a cross-platform editor. Anybody using it out there? Yeah? Okay, so I don't need to talk about it then. As it shows, people are using it, so we got interested in it. We started out with a couple of small little attempt versions, and then recently we put a lot of work into it. We've got about 6,000 installs today, I think, and we're completely open source on it. So who wrote it? Obviously me. I started out with wrapping Puppet commands. Then Glenn Sardi came on and he wrote the initial implementation of the language server and really started to differentiate us on extensions. Austin Blatt was our intern during the summer and he helped out with the language server. So what's in it? We've got some syntax highlighting. You'll see everything that you come to expect from a editor in syntax highlighting. But we get syntax validation through Puppet lint. And this happens as you type, and your problems get shown in the problems pane, and they disappear as you fix them. IntelliSense comes through auto-completion of class, parameters, modules, resources, types. All of that stuff comes through. It's a very slow GIF, so take some time to walk through that. Notice that as you go typing through, you'll get Puppet resources and their parameters and their help showing up in line as you type. After we're done with typing this, we'll get to facts, and facts will be auto-resolved as you type as well. Wait one more second while that comes up. So you'll see have all the facts on your workstation that you're working at right now. So that means if you're sitting on Windows, you're getting Windows facts. If you're sitting on Linux, you're getting Linux facts. Next version that we're going to come out with eventually, you'll be able to run the language server on a target server and get the information locally instead of having to run your code on your target server. Hover support, we already saw this a little bit. Everything that is available to the Puppet agent that's installed on your workstation or your target server is available to your editor. So you'll get the same inline help that you would get from online, the same parameter completion as if you were typing inside any other editor. You'll also notice our facts are getting resolved again, even through hover support. And functions that you declared in your manifests get the same level of treatment as first class types and parameters. You can quickly get started with new manifests by running a Puppet resource command. This is a common way of just getting started. So you type in a particular resource that you want to generate a manifest for, and then you can start editing from here. So it's a quick way to get started, and it uses the Visual Studio command palette. Puppet node graph, common way of looking at the dependencies between class and other resources, is viewing that through the Puppet Enterprise console. But we can also look at it inside the editor itself. Right now, this only works on the manifest that you have open. We're working on enabling that for your entire project. And it will update as you save. And it can get as complicated as your manifest gets more complicated. And we worked with the PDK team to integrate VS Code with PDK. And so you're able to run the same commands that you do in PDK, except inside the Visual Studio Code editor. So if demos work, you have a nice little button over here. And no, I can't make this part bigger. But type. And he went away. Is someone hitting my Alt button? There we go. So I specify a module name and a module path. And yeah, I don't specialize a valid path, and it'll give me an error. Let's try that again. Yeah, demos. Let's open up what was already created. So we get our manifests with our syntax highlighting that or the manifest that we just created in the last demo. We have syntax highlighting now, and we have our spec tests that we create. And we also, if I use the right keys, have the ability to run PDK commands directly in the browser or directly in the editor. So it'll run in your terminal, and you never have to leave the editor in order to use PDK. So we take pull requests. There's the link to the project on GitHub, and appreciate you listening. It's over there.
That's on a different screen. All right. So my name is Bryan Jen. I'm on the Puppet Developer Experience team, and I'm super excited to tell you about Resource API. And given the response to Eric's question about types and providers, I feel like we're on the right track. So what is a custom type and provider? Type and provider is how you extend Puppet beyond what the resources it manages out of the box. So the resources like that are shown on the left here, like file, exec, and package, those things are built into Puppet, and Puppet knows how to manage those. However, if you want to tell Puppet about the outside world and have it manage your native resources and or a network device or an API, a REST API endpoint, then you would need a type and provider to do that. Or if you don't want to write a type and provider, just manifest with a bunch of execs, which is something that probably a lot of people end up doing. So why are custom types annoying? Well, there's a lot of ad hoc copy and pasting in custom types, and there's some magic involved as well. So for example, insurable. What exactly does insurable do? Insurable, is it the same as having a new param that has present or absent? Who knows? Usually people just throw insurable in there and move along, right? And new params, what's the difference between a parameter and a property? And once you've figured out all that for your custom type, it's just an exercise in copy and pasting those blocks of code, right? Also, type validation. It's a Puppet custom type, right? Can we use Puppet to validate those types with the Puppet DSL? Not exactly. With Ruby, you would have to exercise your ability to use regular expressions and to validate whether a string is the right format. Munge blocks, being able to put your values that are coming into your custom types into the right format. A lot of these things are just kind of an exercise, a tedious exercise in replicating the same code over and over again. So what are we doing to improve life writing custom types? With the resource API, as Eric mentioned earlier, we're trying to allow you to focus more on the data. So you would supply the resource API with the information that you would like your type to have in the form of a hash. So you would specify the name, a doc section, and an attributes hash. The attributes hash would have all of the properties and parameters, whether they're init-only properties or read-only properties, in that hash. So for example, we have ensure. And in that ensure block, we specify the type that we'd like that param to have. We utilize the base Puppet types that the DSL knows, and we validate against those. You no longer have to create a regex in order to validate those types anymore. We'll reach into Puppet and validate those for you. Okay. And then there's a description key, which is self-explanatory. And for your special parameters, you can add a behavior. So what the intrinsic property or parameter would have, whether it's a name var or just a regular parameter, a read-only property, or an init-only property. So all this stuff can be defined in your data structure instead of having to copy and paste new param blocks over and over again. So let's get on to the interesting parts. Why were providers hard? And this isn't to shortchange providers, because they're also annoying. There's lots of magic involved in writing a provider. Typically, those who have written providers will know providers as that deep, dark place that dragons may sleep. And you might find yourself surfing through stack traces late in the night. So what are some of the questions that you might ask yourself are, what's the difference between a prefetch and an instances method? Why do I have to define an exists method? What's the difference between a property hash and the resources hash? Do I have to have a flush method? Do I need a flush method? What does it do? Things like that have always been a very complicated thing when it comes to writing a provider. So we're hoping to facilitate your provider writing experience with the resource API. What we're doing with the resource API when it comes to providers is allowing you to focus on how you want to do things, rather than the intricacies of doing it within the Puppet provider framework. So at the end of the day, it's going to be writing a simple class. You have your getters and your setters. The getter will essentially go out and retrieve a hash of objects for your custom type. And the setters will allow you to supply a hash that go out and create those resources. And also pretty common class-based methods like delete and a method called canonicalize, which will format all of your classes into the right format or right structure. The resource API also provides a lot of helpful methods for writing your provider, like logging, a uniform logging system. And most importantly, we now allow your types and providers to be testable. Previously, in the types and provider framework, you need a full Puppet installation in order to unit test your types and providers. And in doing so, you rarely had full, complete code coverage. By abstracting that part of the type and provider framework into a resource API, you're going to be able to have more code coverage, be able to unit test instead of having to write acceptance tests to test your types and providers. So that's just briefly what we are offering with the resource API to help simplify the writing native types and providers. So for more information, we have a GitHub project out there. And on this GitHub project, we're doing ongoing development. You can even install the gem and give it a test drive yourself. So that's it. Thanks.
In here. Thank you so much, Bryan. So this concludes the live stream. Thanks so much to all of you who tuned in. And for those of you who weren't able to make it for the whole live stream, we will have the link posted momentarily, and you can watch to your heart's content. So thanks again. And next up, we're going to do our Open Spaces Kickoff. So this is the portion of the day where if there's something that you're interested in working on, you're feel free to come up and talk about it. And then we have table signs in the back of the room on the swag table. You can grab a sign. We have a bunch of blank ones and markers. Fill that out and grab a table, and then folks can come and work with you there. And I would like to introduce our Director of Engineering, Mike Stahnke. He's another who doesn't really need an introduction. So he's going to make some announcements here while I get my computer up and running real quick.
Hello, hello. All right, so I hope everybody had a good morning. Yes, no, maybe. All right, I'm excited. We have some new stuff going on in the ecosystem. We have new things to work on, new ways to solve problems. Some of the problems we've had for a long time, there are now apparent solutions for how you do it in a puppety way. I'm pretty excited about that. So I hope that the morning was good for you. This afternoon, what you can do is kind of dig into some of that. You can dig into whether you want to play with Bolt, whether you want to work on tasks or plans, or you want to go back and work on modules or adding tasks. You want to just work at PDK, look at the VSCode stuff that was just demoed. There's just so much stuff to work on right now on the contributor side, which I really like. You know, I'm an open source hippie at heart, and so I love watching people contribute and helping them contribute and get code across the line. Contributions are amazing, so thank you to everybody who's done anything thus far. And even asking questions in Slack, it's great just to hear what the questions are that people have and how they're coming up and what that thought process is. It helps those of us who work at Puppet understand kind of the user base and where things are headed. So you can contribute in so many ways, and we do appreciate it. Lindsey did ask for a reminder that there is a PDK talk at PuppetConf. I believe you said it was Thursday. So if you want to see a deeper, longer, more drawn out experience for how Puppet Developer Kit works, that is happening on Thursday. I can't hear a thing you're saying. Wednesday? You told me Thursday. All right. There's a schedule. It's online. You can look it up. It'll be great. Let's see. So the afternoon it's more free-formish, but we also have a few things that are going on that you can kind of opt into. You can opt out and just sit and hack with your friends. The only requirement that I have is that all the people with the amber lanyards don't sit together. They need to go work with contributors and not all sit together and hang out with their friends who work at Puppet. So that's the only requirement that I have for the entire room. Outside of that, we have some other stuff that's going to go on. We have open spaces, which is basically you can get up here and say, hey, I'm going to go work on this. Does anybody want to come hack? And then you go hack on that thing. That's one of my favorite parts. Then we have, let's see, we're going to have a Bolt workshop, which is going to happen over on that end of the rooms. I think Gareth is kind of running the show there. Gareth and Nigel. So, that's pretty neat if you want to go play with tasks and Bolt. And then, let's see, Andrew Brader is going to come up here and talk a little bit about the TAP program. and then we'll just kind of kick off into open spaces. So I guess I'm ready for Andrew if he's around. He's not around. I was looking right. He's left. All right.
Howdy, everybody. I'm Andrew Brader. Prior to becoming a part of the partner engineering group, I was a PSC. I saw a lot of the problems that most of you face today, and I vouched to basically do something about it. We have a very large community of which we owe a great amount of debt to, and we are very thankful for your contributions. But between you, between our own Puppet module team that develops endlessly on and works very hard at modules, they can't do it all. And Matt Gurhari and a bunch of folks in BD came up with the wonderful idea, why don't we create a group who can then work with those companies that we would love to see all these wonderful modules come into the Forge and have them support it. So welcome the Technology Alliance Partner Program, okay? Any questions you have about any of the partner work we may be doing, certainly reach out to anybody in BD, myself, again, Matt Gurhari, who's not here right now, but would love to hear anything you have to say about partners you would love for us to engage. Right now, I can tell you the work we're doing with Splunk. I can talk about F5. I can talk about even some of the Cisco stuff, though they're technically not a TAP partner. The development is very cool, and some of you may be interested in things like, guess what? The F5 module has just been recently open sourced and now contains onboarding, HA, and all kinds of wonderful things like passing actual TMS H commands. Pretty cool, right? Admittingly about time as well. So anyway, again, any questions, please come see me. I'll gladly talk to you about any of it. We do have a page. If you just look up on Google, Puppet, TAP, T-A-P-P, take a look at all the partners. And if there's anything you have interest in that you'd like to get involved, please don't hesitate. Just come up and talk to me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I do want to remind people that there are also Birds of a Feather sessions tomorrow afternoon. It's actually during the last kind of track slot that we would have normally had in a lot of cases. There's Birds of a Feathers, and so that's kind of an opportunity to get together and talk about different topics in more of a free-form style, but it'll be a pretty large group as we have a couple thousand people that'll be all around, and some of them will opt to go to the Birds of a Feather. Things like advanced Puppet language, dealing with regulated environments, DevOps tool chains, finding and building high-quality modules, heading to the cloud and back, and Puppet above 100,000 nodes. Those are just a few of the Birds of a Feather topics that are there, and so some of those will be pretty neat. I love hearing about Puppet at 100,000 nodes in the north because it's just interesting at that point. Those are fun problems. Let's see. What else we need to know here? All right. So for hands-on lab, we're going to have Bolt over here. We're going to have open spaces. We're going to have some discussion. What else do we need to know? Oh, we want to make sure that you're contributing. So if you're contributing to tasks, you can sign up and register here. I'm not sure I want to call it a contest, but it's kind of a contest. So let's get some good stuff going. We can demo them later today. We can look at them. I just want to make sure that everybody's kind of engaged with the tasks. We're using them. We're building on them. We're trying things out. If tasks aren't your thing, that's okay too. We do have a bunch of stuff with PDK and module authoring. I know I have to update a couple of my modules because I'm a little bit behind in new contributor summit was coming up. So some of that stuff will be happening as well. So basically, that's, does everybody remember this? bit.ly/task contributor. Oh, and if you sign up, Meg will send you a prize. But you have to contribute and sign up. You can't just sign up. You have to sign up and contribute. If you meet both of those gates, Meg will send you a prize. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'll sign up. You can also sign up for a lightning talk. So later today, we're going to have some talks where it's just kind of, hey, here's a little bit of what I did either at Contributor Summit or recently at, during your hobby time or during your work time. We'd like it to be something pretty adjacent to Puppet and Puppet related, but there's not really some police that are going to pull you off stage if it's, we'll say, close to Puppet, very close, but not, it doesn't have to be like, here's the greatest thing I've ever done using only Puppet tools. You can demo things. I know I'm going to demo one thing that hopefully will work by then, because it was not working this morning, as demos do. Let's see. You can sign up there at Talk Sign Up 2017. If you sign up and demo something, I won't send you anything. So for the open hacking sessions, we're going to have hands-on labs, open hacking, if you want to discuss things. There's table signs that are way back by the swag table that Anna has, I believe. And so we'll put some of those out and have those around you can assemble. And then now it's time for open spaces. Did I miss anything? I'm good. All right. Yeah, I'm good. All right. So does anybody have any topics they want to talk about? I'll tell you what, I assume people do. If you have a topic that you'd like to talk about, work with others on, whether they're from your company, from Puppet, from everybody else that's here that has Puppet knowledge, just make a small line right here, and you can come pitch, hey, here's what I want to talk about, and I'm going to go sit at this table. You can point at a table, and then people can join you if they want to. And if they don't join you, your idea was yours and yours alone. No. So, no, seriously, make a line. Don't all come up here at once. Come on. User-generated content is king. No? Not enough caffeine. It's like noon. How much caffeine have you had by now? I've had all the caffeine. So. All right, so no one wants to do an open space of any kind. No one wants to be like hacking on something and saying, hey, come learn more about this. Trevor's got something. Yeah, that's it. Oh, come on up. Tell us your name, too, just so that we can learn people's names.
Hi, I'm Rainbow, and I'm from an information security consultancy called New Context. I did not actually expect to get up here, but hi. I work with Puppet a lot, and I am a huge FreeBSD fanatic, and I have noticed a distinct lack of modules for FreeBSD. I've been doing my part to publish a couple of them on Puppet Forge under the username HackerHorse, and I am working on a couple right now, including some to enable the Linux ABI compatibility layer and work with the new beta feature for package base. So if anybody is interested in hacking on Puppet on FreeBSD, find me. I have no idea where I'll be sitting, but I've got rainbow hair. I'm not hard to find.
All right. Awesome.
Hi, my name's Lee. I'm sitting over there in the middle table. On GitHub, I'm StealthyBox, and I use a lot of Docker. Previously, at my old job, we were using Puppet in Docker, and we weren't very successful. So I'd love to hear some stories, or if you guys want to, set up some Puppet 5 environments in a Swarm cluster or Kubernetes cluster or something, then that could be kind of fun. Again, I'm over there in the middle table. Cheers.
Hi, my name's Corey. I'm NWOps on Slack. How many of you know what a REPL is? Okay, that's about what I thought. How many of you know what a debugger is? Okay, more. Okay, so that's why I renamed my tool to debugger. If you would like to figure out how to not only crack inside your Puppet code and set a breakpoint, I'm going to be sitting over there kind of hidden by this column, working on Puppet Debugger. It's really cool. Just come check it out, or maybe you can download it if the internet's working.
Hi, I'm Trevor. I'm the author of the SIMP project for doing compliance automation with Puppet. And in this one, I'm hoping to actually work on making Bolt support something other than SSH and WinRM. I needed to support an asynchronous communications protocol, so if anybody's interested in that, let me know. I'm sitting right over there with by the column.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Cody. For the last couple of weeks, I've been furiously working along with Google a bunch of extra tasks for Bolt, and we'll probably just be doing more of that today. So if you're interested in tasks that are focused on managing cloud resources through API or on host or whatever, I will be sitting with Nelson when I find him somewhere Yeah, back there. And we also have free GCP credit codes in his bag. There's like 300 of them. First come, first serve.
That actually sounds really interesting, and now I'm second guessing if I should do mine because I want to go to that one. But I know someone is already talking about running Puppet in Docker. I want to talk about managing Kubernetes with Puppet. Oh my gosh, why do we do this to ourselves? So if you want to manage containers with Puppet, come talk to me. I don't know where I'll be, but I'll be somewhere.
She will have a sign.
Hi, I'm Peter Suda, work at Puppet, and I've been thinking about something for Bolt is the idea of having a on-demand way of using the currently compiled catalog that's on the machine from the cache catalog, and then also comparing it with what's the upstream. So maybe using a little bit of octocat diff, but on demand on machines, and kind of doing it remotely over Bolt. So if anyone wants to come and talk about that, come find me.
I might come to your. Hi, I'm Kevin Pelissi. I run the GitHub Puppet infrastructure. And speaking of octocatalog diff, I'm the one who wrote that. Sorry to any of you who have tried to configure it. I know it's hard. So I just wanted to volunteer that I'll be sitting around. And if you need some help getting that up and running, I would be happy to help you.
Hello, my name is Jesse Scott. I work for Puppet on the developer experience team. So if you would like to talk to us about PDK or resource API stuff, right now we have a table right up here in the front on this side. So come and chat.
Can I get the Puppet people that were like going to lead discussions to come up here if you haven't already? Because I think there's a few of you that haven't yet.
In case you hadn't already realized, over here there's going to be a hands-on lab for tasks. We'll just keep repeating it until you come and do it. It's basically like, I guess 45 minutes, an hour or so. We'll get you up and running. There's a bunch of exercises. There's a GitHub repo. You'll go through like from not having it on your machine to actually like doing something with plans. And there's also going to be a few of the actual developers who've worked on tasks around there to help you along. So David and Alex and probably some of the others. Definitely like a good sort of bootstrapping exercise for the rest of the conference.
Okay, hey everyone. I'm Eric Putnam. I work for Puppet, clearly. And I'm going to be talking a little bit, well, hopefully I'm not going to be doing only talking, but I'll have a table for chat ops if anyone's interested. Working with HuBot and different clients like Slack and HipChat and IRC and stuff like that. So I'll have a sign, and I don't have any remarkable features, so just come find me.
I think you're remarkable.
That's very kind of you. What about me? Am I remarkable? I don't know yet. I'm Ethan Brown. I'm a Puppet employee as well. Tech lead for the Windows engineering team. We have a Windows table in the back. There will be several of the engineers from my team that are here. Probably be working on maybe some DSC related stuff. We have some kind of work to do in that area in terms of the integration that we have at the moment. So anything else, we're happy to provide help and answers to questions, things like that. Anyone wants to hack on anything, we're pretty much free and open to do whatever. So that's it from our end.
So just to reinforce Gareth's point, we're going to do the tasks hand-on lab. Where? Anybody paid attention? Where is it going to be? Over there, right, yeah. Tasks are going to happen there. I also earlier this year put together a little tool that's sort of a native implementation of the resource abstraction layer in Puppet that lets you run providers without needing all of Puppet. So if you have questions about that or would like to learn how to write providers for that, which is very similar to the resource API we heard about, come find me and we can chat. Okay, but where's the task hands-on lab?
All right. Let's see. If you work at Puppet, can you stand up? So if you're a contributor and you have any question whatsoever about anything, find somebody with an amber lanyard, and if they can't help you, they're going to keep working to find somebody who can. So those are the people that you can work with and get questions answered or find discussion topics or whatever. So they are here to help you. We're here to make sure that the contributor experience is the best that we can make it today.